Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members. I'm Representative Jerry Newton, and I am offering House File 826 to be referred to Labor and Industry.
Great. And I think, Representative Newton, you have an amendment?
I do, Madam Chair. I have an amendment, an author's amendment that I would like to move, the A1.
Great. Representative Newton moves the A1. Any discussion to the A1? Representative Swedzinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just looking at the bill as it sits, it seems as though that's a pretty big amendment. It's not just a kind of a fix-it. It changes quite a bit the way the money is spent. Am I reading that right, or does your research staff, is it more than kind of just a technical amendment, or?
Representative Newton.
Madam Chair, it's my understanding that all this does is to cite the specific statutes that would be covered by this amendment.
Representative Swedzinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the amendment
can speak to it too if you want.
What's that? Yeah, maybe that'd be. Thank you, Madam Chair. That'd be great.
1 second. I think he's looking it up. It's like watching your boy.
You'll have to forgive me. This is not the chapter I know so well.
You're doing great. Are there other questions or other discussion while we're waiting for Mr.
Yeah,
Elap
really.
to? Seeing none.
Madam Chair,
Representative.
Mr. Snope is here and he can help with this.
Mr. Snow, please introduce yourself for the record, and if you have some comments, that would be great.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Andy Snope. I'm with the IBW Local 292. We helped the author here craft this bill early on in session. Our desire was to add prevailing wage to RDA funding. It got off to the revisor. The revisor was a little backed up, and since then, we have worked with this language that you see in front of you on the amendment with the Department of Labor and Industry to more accurately reflect some of the statutes that go along with prevailing wage enforcement, wage reporting, wage and hour reporting, and private right of action that comes with the prevailing wage. The original bill just included reference to the wages of prevailing wage. This moves out a little bit further to help the Department of Labor and Industry enforce those wages and benefits that would be required under those statutes.
Mr. Elap, did you?
Just to add, Madam Chair, some of the sections that are specifically referenced in the amendment do add some things that weren't in the original bill. For example, Section 177.30 requires employers to keep records of rates of pay, hours worked, things like that. But the rest of those sections are, as Mr. Snope just indicated, allowing the Attorney General to enforce these provisions as well.
Representative Swedzinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I mean that just having the enforcement, and I've got neighbors and friends that have small construction companies, and they're just used to going out and fixing a window or putting some insulation and doing these projects. I guess I don't understand how this would potentially affect kind of a small time carpenter who's working on his own, who happens to win a bid. How much work does that add to this seems, it's small, but it potentially could be pretty substantial when it comes to tracking some of this, as far as a small local contractor that's just trying to help his neighbor out with a grant from the RDA. I guess I'm just trying to understand before we pass the amendment.
Yeah.
That's all.
And who are you directing your question to?
Maybe the author of the bill, or someone that's maybe dealt with this before.
Okay. I'll have a
Representative
shot at
Newton.
it. That specific reference to statute 177.30 just requires that a record be kept so that you know how much work was done, the amount of time that was spent. That's all it requires.
Representative Swazinski.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. Like, just, I guess maybe I'm just but we heard in the last testimony for the last bill that these aren't state funds. They're administered by the state, but they're actually ratepayer funds. So the folks that, are just paying their rates and they have that on top of it for the nuclear cast storage. And I'm guessing, I'm trying to jive, we established in the last bill that those are not state dollars. They're just administered. And why is this being brought into, getting in between, like, a homeowner, the grant recipient, and then adding, enforcement by the Attorney General? This seems pretty serious for folks that maybe have just tried to help their neighbor out locally, trying to get their, this is about, I guess it seems like a pretty big expansion to me. And I'm just trying to understand that, like why that would be, why we're like private money essentially that the state is administering, not the states, and applying these to that. I'm just trying to get that.
Yeah. Madam Chair and
Representative
Representative Swazinski, to me, it appears as if it's no more than you would get on a bill, which would show what was done and how much you're being charged for what was done. It's just keeping a record of that, which I think any small business person would do.
Representative Swazinski.
Sounds good. Thank you, Madam Chair. Is, obviously the RDA has limited funds, and I think it was a concern of one of the other members on the other side of the aisle was concerned about setting aside potentially $3 million and that money wouldn't be spent other places. Is there any idea how much more this would cost by asking this and how that current process works between, asking for just putting out general bids or requiring a certain amount of pay? Like how many less projects would potentially move forward if this amendment goes on to this bill?
Representative Newton.
Madam Chair and Representative Swazinski, the only funding that I see was in the note that we got on it'd be the Department of Labor that would, for checking to make sure that whatever requirements we put on are accomplished. It has nothing to do with the RDA funds. They wouldn't be decreased as a result of this. It's the Department of Labor checking to make sure that the project was done.
Representative Swazinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question wasn't to that part, but it was, well, how about I'll ask questions as we go, maybe. I'm just trying to, before we go on this, I just wanted to make sure that we're on the same page, so thank you.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion on the amendment, all those in favor of the A1, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. So with that, Representative Newton, would you like to tell us about your bill?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And this is a very simple explanation, but the bill as amended requires that projects fully or partially funded with appropriations from the Renewable Development Fund must pay workers a prevailing wage according to these state statutes.
And so any questions or discussion by the committee? There are some testifiers, I think, who go ahead with the testifiers. Great. Why don't we go ahead, since Mr. Snope is already here? Go ahead and present your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Acom. Again, Andy Snope with the IBW Local 292. Thank you, Chair Acom and members of the House Climate and Energy Committee for allowing us to testify today in regard to House File 826. This bill would provide additional requirements for prevailing wage and benefits on funds spent from the Renewable Development Account for the purpose of construction projects. I'm the legislative director for IBW Local 292. We represent 5,000 electrical workers in our jurisdiction, as well as today I'm speaking on behalf of the other 14,000 IBW workers throughout the state of Minnesota in the electrical industry. We are here today to speak in support of House File 826. As it says in state statute, it is the public interest in that public buildings and other public works be constructed and maintained by the best means and highest quality of labor reasonability available, and that persons working on public works be compensated according to the real value of their services they perform. It is therefore the policy of the state that wages of laborers, workers, and mechanics on projects financed or in part by state funds should be comparable to wages paid for similar work in the community as a whole. This policy has been in place for the state of Minnesota public funds spending on construction projects for quite some time. We believe it is long past due that this same policy is applied to construction type projects funded from the Renewable Development Account. The Renewable Development Fund was originally established through legislation in 1994, a deal worked out between the Prairie Island community, then NSP, and the state of Minnesota in exchange to allow Xcel Energy to store spent fuel in casks in their facility near the Prairie Island community. Legislation, what began as a one-paragraph statute, has since become a full page of a program that has been used to fund renewable energy research and projects, not only in Xcel Energy territory, but throughout the state of Minnesota. In more recent times, this fund has become a legislative discretionary spending source for renewable energy ideas. Almost every renewable energy project and incentive program proposed has a renewable energy account spending mechanism. The RDA fund walks and talks like the general fund money spending, and for that reason, we think that this is long overdue for the fund to carry the same public works wage and hour policy that comes with general fund spending. The 2013 legislative session was the year that the state legislature began a strong focus on renewable energy and carbon reduction, enacting legislation to promote and incentivize the development of alternative energy moving from legacy energy sources. More solar and wind, less coal and natural gas. Well-paying and great benefited jobs began to disappear as legacy power plants began to shut down. While the IBEW's well-trained and diverse construction workforce evolved through this planning phase, and we are able to meet the challenge of changing industries, we also saw a lot of job loss suffered by our brothers and sisters in the legacy power producing industry. While we watch those jobs in our industries, or we watch those in our industry lose their jobs, more frustration came for workers in the electrical construction industry when, driven by incentives and grants, out-of-state renewable developers flooded the state of Minnesota in search for high profits. This resulted in a race to the bottom of wages and benefits in the renewable energy market. The contractors we work for found it difficult to compete. These out-of-state developers were able to dominate the industry with low-paying wages and benefits that they paid traveling workers from other economic markets around the country. These workers and developers took these investments and left the state of Minnesota's economy to spend the money elsewhere. Just in a few years, we've been able to draw more attention to this issue. We have worked with the PUC and legislators to recognize local hiring, apprenticeship training, and legacy plant job loss that has shifted through our industry. Further providing a proven public policy of prevailing wage requirements around renewable energy development account spending is just another piece of the puzzle to promote great careers and strong economy when we promote renewable energy. Please support House File 826 as amended. Please support good jobs, public policy around good jobs, and please help keep local investments and help spur the state's economy. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Snope. Next on the list to testify is Kevin Pranis, Marketing Manager with Liuna, Minnesota and North Dakota. Welcome back to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Chair Acom. Kevin Pranis on behalf of Liuna, Minnesota and North Dakota. thank Brother Snope for his testimony, which I think really covered it. I would just underscore, we feel similarly as our energy economy is changing. Our strong belief is that jobs and energy should be just as good and just as available to local workers in clean energy and new and emerging technologies as they have been in conventional technologies, which have provided family supporting jobs for generations. And the energy landscape is changing. It's not all just big thermal plants. You have not only large scale wind and solar, but you have community solar gardens, you have rooftop projects, you have all sorts of places we're getting energy, and we want to make sure that those jobs are just as good. And we can say in our experience, to the question of sort of public money and energy money, we would agree with Mr. Snope that effectively this has become public money, that it is controlled and dispersed by the legislature. But I also think it's fair to look at if Excel were using this money to do projects that created energy, either energy savings or energy, Excel consistently pays wages that are, in their contractors consistently pay family supporting wages that are consistent with prevailing wage. And so we're really talking about just treating this money the same as if Excel were spending that money on their system or another utility were spending it on their system, or if it were being spent as a public work. Either way, there's significant benefits here. It's beneficial and practical, and it's unfortunate that in the construction industry, too often we see problems of wage theft and exploitation, particularly targeting immigrant workers, or not only immigrant workers. And so, Mr. Snope spoke to that. We have cases in community solar garden projects of workers who had to go to judges to try to get judgments to get paid, right? Use of temp agency work. We also see cases where what we believe is clear discrimination, where workers are working alongside, immigrant workers work alongside white workers who are making more than twice that rate. That's all of those are things that prevailing wage helps solve. We also know that prevailing wage is practical. I think that Representative Swedzinski asked an important question about what small contractors do when they're required to provide certified payroll. And the answer is, fortunately, we have dozens and dozens of tiny contractors, some with only 2 or 3 employees, who regularly work on prevailing wage projects for state agencies, for MnDOT, and there's all kinds of compliance software and other options that are available, union and non-union contractors who can easily comply. So that's a fair question. Fortunately, all of those tools already exist. So we think this is a reasonable policy. And finally, if we really want to build that construction workforce, not just for energy, but for all of this, we need to be creating those high quality careers and jobs. And I think the prevailing wage means we're creating careers that pay as well or better than college education, as they should, right? As they should, given the amount of work that our members put in. And we think this is an appropriate policy that will be beneficial to industry and beneficial to communities. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Prentice. Looks like maybe Representative O'Neill has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just working through this amendment still because there's so many statutory references. I'm confused by the statutory reference to 177.435 as it relates to agricultural product processing facilities. Why are we adding agricultural product processing facilities into an RDA funding?
Mr.
I have to
Snope,
defer to Mr. Snope on this.
welcome back, Mr. Snope.
Thank you, Chair Rick. I'm Representative O'Neill. So 435 is included in the prevailing wage statute, and the Department of Labor and Industry has recommended this language to cover that as well. I know it doesn't seem like it really should cover that, and
Right.
Actually, I don't really know what an agricultural processing plant is that would be funded by prevailing wage. But in that circumstance, we thought it was important to cover the full prevailing wage statutes that are typically included when speaking about prevailing wage.
Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, except for the fact that RDA money is for renewable development, and I'm trying to understand what renewable development would have to do with an agricultural product processing facility. And the one before that also is interesting. I don't understand why 177.41, which has to do with building roads, also is in here.
So actually, there is a statute, it's 17744, that has to do specifically with highway projects.
Yeah.
So 41 is more so a definitions where rates and hours. And within that definition, prevailing wage covers vertical construction as well as horizontal construction, which includes roads. So it really is part of the definition of what prevailing wage covers. But really, 44 is the statute that covers highways extensively and road.
Representative O'Neill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So so I'm looking at the prevailing wage section, and you've included in section or point 41, you do have 42, you have the definitions. You don't have 43. Let's see, I'm trying to run these through. Yeah, you don't have 43. You do have 43.5. You don't have 44, but you do have 45. So you don't have every section of the prevailing wage portion of statute. You've missed some, but you've added in things. I know we've already adopted this amendment, but I would really ask that as it moves on, that gives, in the Labor Committee, that's given a little more scrutiny. It just doesn't make sense when you're talking about RDA money to, a couple of these additional statutory references just, either you include them all or you don't. And you said you included them all, but you didn't. And the ones you did include don't make any sense to me. So if you would just take a look at that, please.
Representative Newton?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Representative O'Neill. Actually, this covers everything in 177.41 to 177.435. So 43 is included, 44 is included.
Oh,
in that.
I misread that too. So do you see that on line 1.5, Representative O'Neill? It's 177.41 to 177.435. So including all in between. Mr. Snope, did you have a?
Yeah, Chair, Representative O'Neill, I suggested the word through there, but someone thought to was better, so maybe that's the confusion.
It is written a little cumbersome. Maybe it could be cleaned up in that sense. But I still question why we're including agricultural facilities and roads and things like that when it's RDA, when clearly we're not going to be building roads with RDA. I hope we're not building roads with RDA. I'm an Xcel Energy ratepayer, and I think they would be, and I represent the Monticello Nuclear Power Plant and the community surrounding, so we're a little sensitive to that. So I would ask that would, maybe the author would take a closer look at that and make sure that it actually pertains to specifically RDA projects.
Good, thank you. Yes.
And looks like the author's willing to chat with you about that. We do have one person signed up to testify, so maybe we can get that. Joe Bosch, I believe. I apologize if I said the name wrong. Associated Builders and Contractors of Minnesota and North Dakota. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is John Beshy for the record, and I'm with Associated Builders and Contractors in Minnesota. I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to testify today on House File 826. Our commercial and industrial contractor members and the men and women they employ are part of the 75% of construction industry in Minnesota that choose to be merit shop craft professionals rather than be in a union. ABC is opposed to the expansion of prevailing wage mandates on privately funded construction projects. While the funds in the RDA are administered by the state, these are otherwise private ratepayer dollars that go towards investments in renewable energy projects in Minnesota. Such mandates limit competition and drive up the cost of these projects without any increase or guarantee in quality. Paying a specific wage rate set by the Department of Labor using an outdated survey method has yielded outdated and non-local prevailing wage rates year after year. Nothing in prevailing wage laws ensures local workers are employed on these projects either. Prevailing wage mandates have a negative economic impact in two ways. First, in greater Minnesota, where many of these projects will likely be built and skilled trade pay is typically lower than it is here in the metro, artificially high prevailing wage rates eliminate the local bidding advantage and allow large construction companies from other areas or states to take away local economic development dollars and jobs. Second, higher labor costs drives up the overall cost of construction projects and leads to higher costs for consumers and ratepayers. Our contractor members throughout the state already build wind and solar and other renewable projects for utilities and other private owners without issue. They include excavating, concrete, electrical, and steel erection contractors. There's a lot of talk about safety, but the The building trades unions spend countless hours and resources trying to recruit our members, so that should tell you the type of quality and safety records that our members bring to this industry and these projects. We've already seen other bills pass the legislature that require prevailing wage agreements on new repowering projects or large wind energy projects, and this is just another example of our contractors being dictated to how they must conduct their business, and leaves our members asking what's next and where does it end. In closing, we would like to urge the committee to vote no on House File 826 and to allow for fair competition when it comes to these projects. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members again for the opportunity to testify, and I'm available for any questions.
Representative O'Neill, did you have a question? Oh, and I'm sorry. Yes,
I can
go ahead.
defer to over there, it's fine.
Oh, go ahead, Representative Hollins. My apologies, I wasn't looking at the list. After O'Neill?
Well, I was just going to comment on the bill in general. Is that okay? I didn't have
You didn't have a question for the testifier?
no,
or-
not for the press stuff.
I think it's, did you have a question to the testifier? Then let's go to there. Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Representative Hollins. Thank you,
We're just going
Madam
back and
Chair.
forth. Tennis?
Just really quickly, if you could articulate, if you know, the cost difference it would be per project, like if you know, like it's 5% more, or 50% more, 100% more, do you have any sense as to the additional cost it might be?
Madam
Mr.
Chair,
Bush.
Representative, you know, it would vary depending on project, but you could be looking at 10% inflation in project costs.
Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, that's all I had.
Representative Swazinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just, you know, that's interesting, 10%. I was kind of asked that question myself, too. You know, we heard last week in committee talking about when Representative Igo and other members were working on, you know, trying to end slave labor and not use slave labor, you know, when it comes to the sourcing of solar panels. And the author of the bill, I think, replied something along the lines of, you know, we really can't regulate that here at the state. We need to just make sure that no matter what, if we have to weigh the two things, whether we're doing projects or not, we need to err on the side of doing more projects, because the feeling by that, and it seemed like the committee, was that it's more important to do more projects to reduce carbon than it was to protect slaves in other parts of the world. And, you know, if it's increased costs by 10%, that's that much less carbon that will be removed from the atmosphere. And which way do we want it? Do we want projects done to remove carbon or not? You know, if you can do 8 projects with this bill, or do 12 projects without the bill, I don't know, what's going to, is it, I mean, technically, this amendment will cause more pollution because less projects will happen in our neighborhoods. And I'm concerned whether or not, you know, as the testifier said, that, you know, under current law, you know what, local folks can work with the people they have. Well, if they don't, you know, follow these rules with the private money that the state happens to administer, they're going to lose out. They're going to lose local jobs. I mean, when we say local, local means a lot of different things, but someone from your hometown, a contractor, that's a concern as a rural person to me. And I get the politics on this stuff, and I understand it. But if we were dealing with real deal state money, we know what the law is. It is what it is. But this is getting right down to the nitty gritty, folks, of who's going to come in your door, who's going to be qualified to come in your door to replace a window or an electrical box. It's probably not going to be the person there you used to have in your house. It's going to cost more. And regardless of the quality is good, I think, on both sides, but boy, this seems like a bit of a stretch for me. And I get, you know, I get the politics of it all, but yeah, that's all I got to say.
I don't think there was a question. I think you can head back. Thank you so much for your testimony. Is there anyone else that wanted to testify just before we bring it back? Make sure that there wasn't anyone else that wanted to provide testimony. Representative Hollins.
Thank you, Chair Acom, and thank you, Representative Newton, for bringing this forward. So to me, this is just a continuation of my comment previously when we were talking about RDA funds. I think it's my job to make sure that we are protecting and taking care of all Minnesotans, not just my community and my district. And so when we talk about where the RDA funds come from, the Prairie Island community, that's important to me. But equally as important is on the other end of those RDA funds, the workers and the people who are doing that work that is being funded by the RDA need to be paid fairly. It's a matter of fairness and protecting all people. It's not fair to allow the market to govern, because the people who are being taken advantage of are people from within my community, whether they live in my district and are undocumented immigrants or people from other immigrant communities. We want to talk about slave labor. We can talk about slave labor that is happening right here in Minnesota, because those individuals are taken advantage of. They are treated poorly. They are used without concern for how they are going to be treated, the hours that they're being working, and the safety of their livelihood. And so I absolutely think this is important to make sure that we are caring for our workers so that we can create a good economy for Minnesotans. I feel really passionate about this. I'm really thankful that you're bringing this forward, because I think that this, the money passes through us, and we're calling it state money, but it has an origin where people are at risk. It's our duty to make sure that those people are being heard and that the people at the end of this line are also being heard. And to me, that's the workers who are doing this work that's being funded by the RDA. We are merely being passed through. So I'm really appreciative for you bringing this forward, and I would like to request a roll call.
A roll call being requested. There will be a roll call. Any other discussion to the bill? Seeing none. Oh, I'm so sorry, Representative O'Neill.
Sorry, there was a head in the way. I
No,
know
that's
it's hard
okay.
with the shape of table. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just really quickly, I went back through the amendment again. I just want to be clear that not everything that's under the prevailing wage portion is in the amendment. And 177.44 is still not in it, which has to do with road construction. So I just, really urge the author to really look at that clearly. And there are some things that probably shouldn't be in there, because RDA doesn't do anything and everything under the sun. It's supposed to be for renewable development, so renewable energy sources. So I just want to clarify that I did look at it one more time, and there was a portion that was left off. It's not the entire section.
Thank you for that.
And then after we vote, I just have one quick follow-up from a previous committee hearing. I just wanted to bring some information back to the committee.
Okay, great. Representative Alton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a really quick comment, but sometimes we try to label people. If you vote this way, you're this. You vote that way, you're that. I think this bill is not complete. I'm very concerned about the language. I'm concerned about that agriculture. I'm from an agricultural district, and I am concerned that that is in this bill right now. And so just be careful that we're not looking at motives and that type of thing, but I will be a no vote.
And I think there's going to be some discussion going forward about potential changes before the next step. So I appreciate that. Seeing no further, Representative Kraft?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question for, was it Mr. Beshy? Did I get the name right?
Welcome back. Thanks.
So you made a comment.
Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You made a comment about the cost differential. What's your source of information for that?
Madam Chair, I will have to get that information to you. It comes from our members and the rates that they currently pay.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, I'd be happy to follow up with that information.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you. I'd love to see that. Appreciate it.
Any other discussion or comments? All right, with that, any closing comments by Representative Newton?
Madam Chair, I will take Representative O'Neill's suggestions into consideration and intend to move it through .44 by the time it gets to labor. So with that, I would like to renew my motion that House File 826 as amended be approved and moved on to Labor and Industry Committee.
And the clerk will take the roll. The chair votes aye.
Representative Kraft?
Aye.
Representative Swedzinski?
No.
Representative Altendorf?
No.
Representative Bierman.
Aye.
Representative Carroll.
Aye.
Representative Davis. Was that an aye?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Representative Garofalo.
Aye.
Representative Hemmingson Yeager.
Aye.
Representative Hollins.
Aye.
Representative Hornstein.
Aye.
Representative Igo.
Aye.
Representative Mecklin.
No.
Representative Newton.
Aye.
Representative O'Neill.
Aye.
Representative Ream.
Aye.
Representative Stevenson.
Aye.
There being 15 ayes and 3 nays, the motion prevails, and the bill is referred to the Committee on Labor and Industry. Thank you, Representative.